of silence. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. As a courtesy to everyone, please take a moment to silence your cell phones. Excuse me. Or any other electronic devices you may have that might ring or beep during the meeting. Thank you. Copies of tonight's agenda and the entire information packet that the council will be using are available online and on the city website. In addition, for those here at the meeting, copies of the agenda are present here in the front. I'd like to state for the record that we had a closed meeting on Monday, October 24th, and in accordance with the general provisions article, section 3-306C2 of the annotated code of Maryland, and without objection, it is noted the minutes of tonight's meeting reflect that the Common Council met in a closed meeting on Monday, October 24th, 2022 at 8:15 p.m. pursuant to general provisions article section 3-305B3 to consider the acquisition of real property for a public purpose and matters directly related thereto, and to consult with counsel to obtain legal advice. The following staff members were in attendance: City Clerk Barber, City Administrator Imholz, and City Attorney Lehan. Common Council took no action during the meeting, and the closed meeting adjourned at 8:52 p.m. Now I'd like to, before we move on, I'd like to introduce Ms. Erin Benevento, who is the Chief of Staff to the President at McDaniel College. Last year, President Jaskin, when she took over the office of President, told us that she looked forward to having McDaniel staff visit us frequently and share with us news about what was happening at the college and take back to the college news of what was happening in the city. So we're welcome to have one of those occasions tonight. Ms. Benevento, thank you very much for joining us tonight. Anything you'd like to share?
Just a couple of updates, if I may.
Sure.
Thanks for having me. This is actually my first city council meeting, so I know one of my, though I have been in this room before for a field trip that I brought some of our students on a couple of years ago, so that I knew exactly where to go. But my colleague, Dave Sears, was here just a few weeks ago, and he gave a lot of big updates for the whole semester, so I don't have a ton to share, but I wanted to report that since he was here, McDaniel has launched our strategic plan for 2022 to 2027, reaching new heights. And one of the initiatives within that plan is to focus on community engagement and initiatives. So we wanted you all to know how critical you are in the next 5 years that McDaniel is looking at. And we're so excited that council will be joining President Jaskin and the leadership team for breakfast on the Hill in just a few weeks. And then my second thing is just a thank you. We had our parent and family weekends up on the Hill this past weekend, and there were a number of community components that we were so grateful for. We had the Black American Film Festival movie at the Carroll Arts Council. And then one evening we encouraged family members, instead of eating on campus, to come downtown and eat at a number of restaurants that offered discounts or special items to our parents and families. So thank you so much. It was a great weekend, and we're going to continue that during the last home football game of the year, moving forward in the parent and families weekend. So thank you.
Great, thanks very much. Always a pleasure to have you report, and we look forward to meeting with Dr. Jaskin and the rest of the senior leadership teams in a few weeks. And thanks again. Move on now to approval of the minutes. We have minutes from the special meeting of the Mayor and Common Council on October 20th, the closed meeting on October 20th, and the closed meeting of October 24th. I have a motion to approve the minutes. Been a motion by Mr. Dayhoff. Is there a second? Second. There's a second by Ms. Gilbert. All those in favor, please say aye. Those opposed say nay. The ayes seem to have it, and the ayes have it, and the minutes are approved. Report from the mayor, Dr. Becker.
Okay, thank you, Council President Pecoraro. So we made it through Halloween into mid-November, and I'm sure that everyone has noticed the lights on the trees on Main Street, and I've heard absolutely nothing but positive remarks and comments on the lights, and they certainly add a new depth to the atmosphere of Main Street. And I'd like to thank our city administrator, Ms. Impulse, for one of her brainchilds for those lights on Main Street. Also want to take a moment to congratulate all the our new locally elected officials at the county and the state level. There are a lot of new faces that are going to be joining elected government, and I'm looking forward to working with you over the next several years on issues related to Westminster. The city council and our city administrator held a very productive strategic planning session last week, and I think I can safely say we have a very bright but busy year ahead of us as we make progress on both short and long-term goals for the city. On Friday, I had the honor of swearing in one of our newest police officers, Officer Heath Acosta. And while I welcomed him to the city on Friday, I just want to take a minute again and welcome him to Westminster. On Saturday, in addition to the farmers market, where I always am, I attended the first annual Carroll County Environmental Symposium. This symposium was organized by Chris Hine in the Carroll County government, and with a mission of bringing together organizations to meet in a place where they could share their projects and missions with the public and with each other. McDaniel College was represented at the Environmental Symposium, as were a number of local nonprofits that represented not only areas in Carroll County, but also some in Howard County and Baltimore County. Westminster was represented as we showcase our Pure Water Westminster project, and we continue to receive a lot of positive comments from residents and non-residents alike who applaud us for our forward-thinking approach for dealing with our water issues. They also had a recycled art competition, and the winning artwork will be on display at the city administrative building over the next several weeks until the holidays. And it was a really nice event with the opportunity to learn about other environmental initiatives in the county. And then finally, thanks to all the staff who keep our city running and looking good. As I was driving through Main Street early on Sunday morning, city staff were out emptying the trash cans on Main Street. The leaf vacuum has been running overtime this fall. We have public safety, code enforcement, finance, and other departments, and we wouldn't be the city we are without the work of the staff. So thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Becker. Move on now to reports from standing committees. We'll begin with our liaison to the Carroll County Arts Council Board of Directors, Mr. Dale.
Thank you, Mr. President. Coming up on November the 25th, at the Arts Council, we will screen the movie Julia. That's on Friday, November the 25th at 1 o'clock and at 7:30. And we're looking forward to that. All the foodies in town are looking forward to that. It ought to be quite fascinating. She had quite an interesting career. And then we have Festival of Reeves coming up November 25th to December the 4th, daily from 10 o'clock to 7 o'clock. It brings an awful lot of folks into town. And we look forward to that event every year, especially with the lights. Lots of exciting programming continuing at the Arts Council. Check the website for more information. That'll be it, Mr. President. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Hoff. Mr. Hoff is not here to give an economic and community development committee report. We're on the finance committee. I have nothing to report from the finance committee at this time. Personnel committee, Ms. Gilbert.
I have nothing to report.
Thank you. Public safety, Mr. Kamani.
Just a couple of things, Mr. President. On November 3rd, Westminster Police Department detectives arrested Mr. Curtis L. Frisbee based on a criminal arrest warrant that they obtained following their investigation of a robbery at the Penny Mart on Pennsylvania Avenue that occurred on 10/23/22. There was a media release that went out. I unfortunately have to admit that I've known Mr. Frisbee since high school. We went to high school together, and I pulled his rap sheet up, and it was 7 pages long, I think. So he's been somebody of interest, I guess, here to our police department. I saw one of the cases dated back to when we were in high school, and I think Schuster was listed on that. I didn't realize he was in the department back then. But anyway, so it was good to get that case closed. And once again, kudos, chief, to just one more job. Very well done closing. I was joking a little. I shouldn't be, not funny. So chief, thank you. And please pass on to the department how much we appreciate the job that they do and continue to do, getting folks like that hopefully off the street for a little while. The other thing, the mayor already alluded to it, a new officer, Acosta, was sworn in by the mayor on the 8th. He's a lateral police officer, which is great because it means he comes in with a few years of municipal police experience already under his belt. So he should be able to go to work once he gets through his training period, understanding how we do things here in Westminster. He should be able to hit the streets running pretty quickly. So that's great news. That's all I have for public safety.
Thank you, Mr. Kavachi, and Public Works.
Yes, sir. So again, the mayor alluded to this also. Leaf collection continues to be a priority for the next couple of weeks. The city of Westminster will not be running the leaf back on Thursday, November 24th or Friday, 25th, due to the Thanksgiving holiday. Leaf back services are currently scheduled to end on December 9th. I will say that new leaf back is so quiet compared to the old. They were in front of my house picking up my 200 yards worth of leaves on the street, and it was incredibly quiet when they were doing it compared to the old machine. Household trash service provided by Ecology Services will operate on a revised schedule for the Thanksgiving holiday week. Only Thursday and Friday collection dates will change. Household trash normally collected on Thursday, the 24th, will be collected on Friday, the 25th. Household trash normally collected on Friday, November 25th, will be collected on Saturday, the 26th. And even though I personally am making this announcement, I'll still put my trash cans out a day early. That's like I do every time. And then wonder what happened. Installation of the downtown holiday decoration continues for the holiday season. The lights on Main Streets look spectacular. They really do. And it actually encouraged me to already light up some things around our house. As a matter of fact, yesterday. Hardware for the new speaker system in downtown area along Main Street has been installed. The speakers are scheduled to be working in time for the holiday season. So some very exciting stuff. And that is everything I have, Mr. President. Thank you.
Thanks. It's going to be a very festive Main Street this year. Looking forward to it. Very excited. Thank you. Recreational Parks, Mr. Deha.
We'll look forward to having a meeting come sometime soon. We haven't had a meeting for quite some time. So we'll look forward to a full report on the pool and things like that. So that'll be fun. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Mr. Deha. Technology Committee will be meeting on the 29th. Looking forward to getting caught up on some issues there. And that's it for committee report. Time for council comment and discussion. There's the opportunity for council members to share any thoughts or comments they care to make on other issues that did not come under the committee reports about anything going on in the city. And we will begin with Mr. Kavachi.
Mr. President, very briefly, I just would like to echo the mayor's sentiment that, staff has been just continually knocking it out of the park on many fronts. We had a, 6-7 hour work session last week, and we were able to really dig into some good medium to long-term view items, because we weren't dealing with a bunch of issues that were fires that needed to be put out, things that we had to kind of respond to immediately that were problems, as we have had to do sometimes in the past in these work sessions. This one we were able to really take a long view and look at 5 and 10 and 50 years down the road. Some of the things we talked about were things that we probably won't necessarily even see come completely to fruition in our lifetime. And that was, to me, very refreshing that we were able to spend the bulk of the work session thinking about things at that level. And the reason we can do that is because we have a city administrator and a senior staff and the rest of the staff also, but in particular, the city administrator and senior staff that are doing things on a day-to-day basis that keep the trains on time and things are smooth. And and we're not needing to feel like we've got to stick our finger in the pie constantly, with the day-to-day things. So we can do what we should be doing, which is taking that long view and making sure that our grandchildren will have a wonderful place to live in Westminster, just like we have the opportunity. That's all I have, Mr. President.
Thank you, Mr. Cavacci, although I'm not sure what you meant about not seeing these things in my life. I'm not going anywhere. I don't know what you're doing, but anyway, I'm looking forward to seeing these. Mr. Deha.
Want to thank Jess and Melissa and Abby for all their work preparing the Armory for the American Legion Veterans Day ceremonies. We really, really appreciated that. And I will assume that the Public Works Chair will be accepting recommendations for the music and the speakers. Perhaps we can have heavy metal Friday or something like that.
Little Iron Maiden.
Iron Maiden.
That's how
That'll be it, Mr. President, before I continue and get in trouble.
Thank you very much. Ms. Gilbert.
I don't have too much. I've been kind of confined to my sofa since my surgery, so haven't really gotten out of the house much, but I do want to congratulate all the new elected officials and look forward to working with everyone in their new positions. I will echo all the sentiments that all of my colleagues up here have mentioned about what came out of the retreat, and looking forward to all the future plans that we may have, and just the forward thinking and planning from our senior staff. It is absolutely amazing to kind of see the wheels turn and just brainstorming and what it could result in. And also want to remind folks that our electric parade will be on the 26th of November, right after Thanksgiving. That's all I got.
Thank you, Ms. Gilbert. I'll just add my thanks, especially my colleagues, for a great day for our strategic planning session. I think it was very productive. I appreciate everybody's willingness to enter into it in the right spirit, and it was great to have with us this year as a full experience partner in the city, our city administrator. I think that instead of just having 6 of us, having 7 people working together to try and think these things through is tremendously valuable. I hope that it's only been a short time, but I hope she has a chance over the coming weeks to share whatever she can from that session with the senior staff and let that pass on down to the rest of the city employees, because I think it's valuable for them to hear some of the things we were thinking about. And also add my congratulations as well to folks who were both successful in the election last Tuesday, as well as those who were not successful in the election, but nonetheless made the effort. It was great to have them all as candidates, and I had the opportunity to run into some of them since then, and they've all expressed an interest in working with the city. They know we've got lots of things that we're trying to do, and we're very excited about that. So looking forward to getting that work done. And finally, I want to thank Ms. Gilbert for pushing forward the idea of lighting City Hall for Veterans Month, I guess, week. I'm not sure how long it's supposed to be, but maybe that's why we get the green tint in the windows tonight as the lights come through. But yeah, it's not something we make a regular practice of doing here at City Hall. We did it in support of Ukraine, in the early stages of the war, and left that up for quite a while. And I think this is really just good. Then we did some red, white, and blue lights right after that, around the time the court was charged, and 4th of July. But this is really only the 3rd time that I think we've done that I can recall in a regular, organized sort of way. So pleased, we're going to do it for this.
Throw a couple red bulbs in a week or two and we'll have
And with that, we'll end council comments and discussion. Move on now to ordinances and resolutions. We have 3 items tonight under that category. The first is adoption of ordinance number 945, amending chapter 16, ethics of the code. Is that right? Ethics of the code of the city of Westminster to incorporate changes required by state law with respect to conflict of interest and financial disclosure provisions. Ms. Imhoff.
As you may recall, local governments are required by state law to adopt ethics laws that include conflicts of interest and financial disclosure provisions for local elected officials that are equivalent to the state's. The Maryland General Assembly enacted legislation during its 2021 session that made various modifications to the state's ethics law regarding conflicts of interest and financial disclosures for state elected officials. Accordingly, local governments must incorporate these changes into their ethics ordinance. Ordinance 945 has been drafted for introduction and today adoption to amend Chapter 16 Ethics Code of the City of Westminster to incorporate changes required by the state law with respects to conflicts of interest and financial disclosure provisions.
All right, thank you very much. We have a motion, this is for adoption, we have a motion for adoption.
I'll make a motion to adopt.
A motion by Ms. Gilbert, is there a second? Second from Mr. Kavachi. Any discussion or any questions on this?
Mr. President.
Mr. Deha.
Mr. Kvasi, want to echo your comment last time to make sure that folks watching the meeting understand that this is just some fine tuning of what the legislature asked us to do. No major revisions or anything like that. As a matter of fact, I would characterize some of it, non-substantive formatting changes. Yeah.
Well, and in fact, we do want to keep current as the
Yeah.
legislature is
Yeah.
asked. And so we will do that. Mr. Kavachi, did you want to add anything to that?
I think the only thing I'd say is, the key is this isn't in response to an issue.
Right.
Related to the city of Weston, so this is a response to a requirement set upon us by the state.
Very good. All right, thank you. Hearing no further comments or discussion or questions, we'll move on to a vote. All those in favor of adoption of ordinance number 945, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say nay. The ayes seem to have, the ayes have it. Excuse me, and the ordinance is adopted. Excuse me, I'm sorry. I'm still trying to cough. But I'm fine. I can't completely slide away.
You're gonna let them see some of those changes.
I'm pretty hard.
Okay.
Adoption of ordinance number 946. Chapter 36 procurement and contracts of the code of the city of Westminster. Provide that the mayor and common council may waive various requirements relating to competitive procurements for good cause. Director of Finance, we'll go, Ms. Rogers is here. Ms. Imhoff, anything you'd like to say on this?
Yes, sir. Chapter 36 of the city code requires purchases over $25,000 to be awarded through a competitive bid process with some exceptions. There are times, however, when based upon research by city staff, it is believed that the bid process will not yield the lowest price. For example, when the city is aware of a state, county, or municipal contract for an item, but is unable to procure the item cheaper through dealing directly with the vendor. But is able to procure the item cheaper through dealing directly with the vendor. Chapter 36 does not currently offer any other avenue for purchases over $25,000 where there is a good reason to make a purchase outside of the existing process, such as an opportunity to purchase something for less money. The city attorney has drafted the proposed legislation to establish a process for mayor and council to consider waiving the competitive procurement requirements for a good cause. Staff recommends introduction and now adoption of ordinance 946, procurement and contracts of the code of the city of Westminster, to provide that the mayor and common council may waive various requirements relating to competitive procurements for good cause.
Thank you, Ms. Imhoff. We have a motion for adoption.
Motion for adoption.
I'll second.
There's a motion by Mr. Dale, a second by Mr. Kavachi. Any further discussion? Any questions, comments?
Mr. President,
Mr. Kavachi?
obviously when you see anything that relates to us potentially not thoroughly vetting the bid or going through the bid process, it raises an eyebrow. And when I first saw this, I thought, wait a minute, but as you really dig into it, there's a lot of thought that went into this in terms of how we were hamstringing ourselves by not allowing ourselves to utilize some of those tools that are available to us in the state. And I guess predominantly state, right? That's mostly where we're getting this pricing. And I think it's really smart. I don't know where this drove from, what level and who and what department, but this is good stuff. And this is, next tier of thinking in terms of how we kind of wade through these issues. And I was impressed as I, read through it. I thought, oh, this is smart. It's a good move. So congratulations, Ms. Imhoff, to you and whoever else in staff kind of thought this through because it's a sharp move.
Mr. President,
Zumos.
Thank you, Councilmember. We've been working with the staff over the last year on utilizing critical thinking across the departments. This particular item came up in the Public Works Department because they found that Public Works often procures goods, right, as opposed to services. So we're buying meters and nuts and bolts and things like that. The companies that bid on the state level are big companies, and they're frequently in other places. And we found that we could find, and this of course has happened in every department, but it was predominantly coming up more often in Public Works Department. We found that we could source a good for less locally, which means when it's time to fix it, the person that sold it to us is local, is in Carroll County or somewhere nearby, instead of having to drive to Pennsylvania to pick up the good in the first place and then drive to Pennsylvania to get it fixed as well. So there were a lot of good reasons, and we certainly vet everything that goes in front of council that's over $25,000. It's a value of the city staff entirely to be good stewards of the public funds. But there are just plenty of opportunities for us to purchase things locally or in a different way when there's a good cause for it. And so thankfully, the city attorney has prepared for us what is essentially a good cause waiver under the procurement rules that give us, the city staff, another avenue to come to council and say, we think this is the right thing for you to purchase for the following reasons.
Great, thank you. Anything else from anybody?
Mr. President. Yeah, I wanted to echo the remarks. By the time it gets through to the state contract, it's quite a competitive bid. So it's already competitive bid. It's exhaustingly by the time it gets to that level. So the benefit from that is pretty smart stuff. I'm really happy about this. Thank you.
Right, thank you. Who else? Okay, hearing no further discussion. Move on to a vote. All those in favor of adoption of ordinance number 946, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say nay. The ayes seem to have it, the ayes have it. And ordinance number 946 is adopted. Introduction of ordinance number 947, amending chapter 14 elections, section 14.1.1, Board of Elections. To alter the composition of the Board of Elections by reducing the size of the board from 6 members to 3. Then a motion to, this is for introduction tonight. Now, a motion to introduce.
So moved, Mr. President.
Thank you. Motion from Mr. Bocci, second from Ms. Gilbert. I'll just say a word. This is something that the council asked staff to put together. Members of the council will recall that when the board was created a couple of years ago, the ordinance was brought to the council pretty late, prior to not long before the election season was going to begin. We didn't have a lot of chance to really think this through. And I think that upon some reflection, over the time since the last election, since the board's been in place, that the way it was constructed seemed unwieldy. And so we have moved forward to make these changes to reduce the number of members from 6 to 3 to make it possible for other folks to serve on the board, not just limiting the pool of the potential board members to election judges, all of which I think are conducive to having better citizen input and making it easier for the board to manage the elections. We may have further thoughts on this as we go forward, but I think this is a good place for us to start in trying to, sort of deal with this. Anybody else have any thoughts or comments on this? Any questions? Hearing none, we'll move on. All those in favor of introduction of ordinance number 947, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say nay. The ayes seem to have it, the ayes have it. And the ordinance is introduced and will be placed on the calendar for adoption at a future meeting. Move on now to bids. We have 3 bids here tonight. The first is award of a contract for the clock tower rehabilitation project and concrete protection and restoration from Baltimore, Maryland, in the amount of $1,046,400. That will return to Mr. Dick.
Thank you, Mr. President. Current capital project funds, including funding for clock tower rehabilitation located at 66 East Main Street. This project was advertised on September 28, 2022 on EMMA with a pre-bid meeting and a bid due dates of September 26th, 2022 and August 12th, 2022, respectively. Pricing was requested for total rehabilitation of the clock tower. This included new structural support, brickwork, all wood and metal embellishments, replacement, clock face and lighting. This work will require a complex and extensive scaffolding system, as well as removal and replacement of the bell and its operating mechanism. Below is the summary of the only bid received: concrete protection restoration Inc. of $1,400,000 with a fiberglass upgrade price of $46,000. City staff and design engineering firm ETC has interviewed the firm, reviewed, evaluated the bid, and determined that the bid from Concrete Protection and Restoration Inc. in the total amount of $1,036,200 is acceptable with regards to the city needs and the complexity of the work in this project. The FY 23 budget for this project is $400,000. A budget amendment will be needed in the amount of $646,400. Staff recommends that the mayor and common council accept the bid with Concrete Protection and Restoration Inc. from Baltimore, Maryland in the amount of $1,046,400.
All right, thank you, Mr. Dick. May I have a motion on the award for the contract?
I'll make a motion.
The motion by Ms. Gilbert to approve, to award the contract. Is there a second?
Are we gonna discuss this after, or are we just?
No, we need to get it on the floor. Thank you. There's a motion by Ms. Gilbert and a second by Mr. Dayhoff. Any questions or staff or comments?
Mr. President.
I'll let the mayor go first.
Mr. Dick, what is your insight on just the one bid received? So why just one, or?
So we had, I believe it was 6 engineering firms that showed up, came back even for a second visit. It's a very complex repair to do, restoration to do, with the height, with the scaffolding involved. Talking with the engineering firm beforehand, we figured it would get narrowed down to probably only maybe 2 because of that factor alone. And we actually only ended up with 1 at that point. Put it back out. I'm not going to say we would get any more bids. We had some of the biggest companies in the area here for this. It's a tight, everybody knows there's no parking. They're going to have to use probably a lot, get everything over to the same scaffolding system alone that they had to come up with. It's quite extensive.
And then just in your opinion, I haven't been up in the tower. In lieu of fixing it, or if, is there another option?
And Madam Mayor, if I could answer that question.
Yes, ma'am.
The staff has not evaluated that question.
Okay.
We've evaluated this bid because the council instructed the staff to fix the clock tower. We haven't looked at other options yet.
Thank you.
Mr. Dick, do you want to answer beyond that?
So in reality, there's really only two options: either fix it or remove it. But as Ms. Enholz indicated, we didn't look at that option.
Okay, thank you.
I mean, I'm certainly not an engineer or an expert in this kind of thing, but it seems to me that removal, you're right, those are the 2 options. And removal would be at least as expensive, right, as repair. Just by the nature of just thinking about it. A bunch of things.
Mr. President.
Ms. Gilbert.
So, Mr. Dick, this is obviously your field of expertise, and I value your opinion. So I had a couple questions, and I'm hoping you can clarify a few of them for me. So first of all, if we do nothing to this clock tower. Given the horrible condition that it is now, right now, that leaves the city into a huge liability. If it would fall down, say next week, in an ice storm or heaven knows whatever else would come through, tornado, you name it. So obviously, we're put in a position where we have to do something at this point. And like you said, it's either fix it or remove it. And I can't imagine that even removing it would even be less than what it is, because if we remove it, you're gonna be dealing with removing an entire huge couple story. I mean, even though from the ground, it looks like the numbers are this big, they're actually huge in the box, so. We're talking about another huge expense.
Very well.
And what would we do with it? Once we just destroy it, correct?
Mr. President, if I can answer that question, again, we have not, the staff has not evaluated that question. We've only looked at putting a bid out to fix it. We can certainly go back and table this if you'd like until the next meeting and see if we can ask some of those questions to figure out. It sounds like there might be some questions about what happens then. But we have not done that yet.
I have a follow-up, which is thinking to totally kind of the opposite, because I saw that you had a fiberglass upgrade in the base price. What is the benefit of the fiberglass upgrade compared to what?
So a lot of for the top when you look up in the ground, but a lot of all that's wood with some metal embellishments. The wood itself is rotted. That would now be fiberglass, which will not rot. It'd be less maintenance for us as far as painting. It'll be, the fiberglass will be old and white. So that the maintenance of that will be a lot less.
Mr. President, may I ask another question?
Surely, absolutely, you like. There's never on the number of questions you're allowed to ask.
I'm sure someone here, how old is the clock tower? Part of our historic structures for Westminster, like exactly how far does it date back? Councilman Dayhoff, do you know that one?
Do not know.
In fact, in the building.
It's on the building.
It was when the building was built, okay.
It was donated.
Bet it was less than $1 million.
It certainly was.
Anybody else? Any more questions? Mr. Gilbert?
No.
You're welcome to come back with more. if you like. Anyone else? I'm just curious, when does this bid expire? When does the bid expire?
So I think it's 60 days after the time we get the bid. So we've had the bid over a month because we did extensive. We interviewed them, so we're probably a month and a half into that, 2 months. We still have the right to.
All right, so we're gonna make a call. If not tonight, at the next meeting. Okay, just want to make sure everybody understood that.
This part.
Mr. President.
Mr. Kavachi.
Go ahead, I'll yield, Ms. Gilbert.
I just wanted to thank you. The Concrete Protection and Restoration Incorporated, I believe they're one of the few companies, I know you sent it out for bid, but this is a company that is well known, and it's one of the few companies that could actually do this work. Is that also correct? Thank you.
Mr. Kavachi.
So a couple of things. Number one, just a quick response to Councilwoman Gilbert's comment. Councilman Huff isn't here this evening because he had a medical thing. But, he actually is familiar with these folks. He's worked with them in the past and said they're without question the best in the business in the area at what they do, and they're absolute perfectionists. It's probably part of the reason it's so expensive, but he said that he has a history with them and it has been nothing but impressed with the work that they did. So I have very little doubt that they do the project that's going to be done really well and it's going to last a very long time. So I know all of you are fully expecting me to try to kill this thing and fight against it, and not spend the money, because that's typically what I do for almost everything here in the city. However,
That's not true.
yeah, that's not totally true, but I think I think we need to do this, and I'll give you my reasons, even though it pains me greatly to say it. I think part of the problem is we talked about $400,000 early on in the process, and now it comes back to this figure, and it just seems so shocking because it's so much higher than what we originally talked about, but we really didn't have a solid basis for that $400,000 number to start with. And when you really look at what it's going to take to do this, I'm not surprised it's this expensive, given what it's going to take. Problem is, number one, the clock tower is probably the most iconic. It's our logo, for God's sake. I mean, we use it in our literature. It's on our, I'm sure it's all over our website. It's on virtually everything that we do. It is, I mean, it is the kind of, like I said, it's the logo basically of the city. And when that clock is not functioning properly, I constantly hear about it from folks on a regular, consistent basis that it's not working or that it's off by a little bit or whatever. And I think we've got a lot of folks in town that would be just, I think they come at us with pitchforks and the whole tar and feather us if we tear that thing down. Not to mention the fact that I think you're probably right. It may not be $1 million to tear it down, but it's probably $500,000, or more. And then we have nothing. And then we destroyed this iconic piece. But I think what makes this palatable, frankly, is we got some money from the state. So we did get a portion of the funding from the state. So that's great. It's not even half of it, but it's some of it. And then frankly, we have the COVID funds that we do have to spend. And this is a eligible item to spend that money. So I think we have to keep in mind the reality is we won't actually be spending any city tax revenue to make this repair, even though it's a lot of money. None of it's going to come out of the money that's collected in taxes for property taxes for the city. It's coming out of state funds, which there's some tax money in there, but not the property tax. And then the bulk of it's going to come out of federal funds that we received through COVID that we have to spend anyway. We've got to spend it within a window of time. This qualifies. So I think we need to do it. I think at the end of the day, it's something we almost are forced into doing, but I think we've got to do it. I think it's the right decision to move forward. And I'm going to try to make this the last time, at least the next couple of years, that I advocate for spending this kind of money on anything. But so we'll leave it at that.
Thank you, Mr. Kavachi.
Mr. President,
Ms. Gilbert.
one more thing. We did budget 400,000 for this project already, correct?
Correct.
So you're only actually needing the extra 646.
Well, we have 200 from the state also.
Right,
So it's
right.
really only
Only 446.
COVID.
We budgeted 400,000. Of that 400, 200,000 is the state fund.
Okay.
So we need 600,000 for this project, and
And that's ARPA, correct? That the plan?
it is, I'm looking at it.
It's fun. One more thing, and I guess the other thing I wanted to say is, the $42,000 to go with the fiberglass upgrade, $46,000. I mean, that's what, 4% increase. It would be almost ridiculous not to do that. If we're confident that it's going to give us longevity, less maintenance in the long term, because I think we're all hoping this is a 50+ year fix that we're spending this money on. And I would assume that's going to give us that additional longevity for a relatively small percentage of what we're spending. Is that accurate?
Yeah, that's accurate.
So, I mean, I think if we're going to do this, we move forward and just take the whole thing at this point.
Mr. President.
Yeah.
To clarify the question that Councilmember Gilbert asked, the fiscal year 23 budget included $400,000, 200 of which came from state funds, 200 of which was programmed from ARPA funding. So the remainder of the project, the additional 600,000 would be budgeted from ARPA. So there are no local city dollars in this particular project being proposed.
Anyone else?
Mr. President,
Mr. Daniel.
and I meant to do some research on this, but if I'm not mistaken, when it was built in 1896, it was extremely expensive. So, I mean, if you look at if you look at an analysis of the cost, compare and contrast, it was about the cost of a building at one time, to put it in. It was donated by the Bale family. I've been up there and I've worked on it before. It's huge. It's huge. The other thing is that when it was built, no one really took into consideration, I mean, you know, the site location for the building was the site location of the building, but that is where all of our weather comes. And that has certainly had a deleterious impact upon the clock tower. And to do it right, the other thing is if you look at dollar cost averaging, it's a good investment. If you look up ARPA funds in the dictionary, you see a picture of spending money on a capital expenditure such as this in order to save us operational money down the road. So I think it's a good investment. We also considered at great length at one point in time moving it to another location. But heck far, where are you going to move it? And that would be just as expensive. And the feedback that I got from that idea is that the idea of moving it was sheer heresy. So I think this is something we just have to grit our teeth and just do it and do it right. And I don't want to postpone it. I don't want to postpone it at all. As a matter of fact, Mr. President, I wonder if we could ask Mr. Dick, when is it that the work would begin? Would it be?
So they've been calling, asking us where we're at. So
Cool.
they want to, just because of the lead time of getting some of the
You
parts.
can do that in cold weather.
Yeah, so they do have they gave me a schedule of 265 days from the time they start to completion. So that's about how long it will take once we tell them, give them, the order.
I've been promised a tour of the dome down at the Maryland State House, which of course, at this point in time, has Gatling all around it. So it should be pretty interesting for some pretty iconic photographs. Let's go ahead.
Right, well, I'll just add my 2 cents for it. I think I agree with Mr. Vachi. I think we really have no choice. I think it is an iconic symbol of the city. I think we have an obligation we took on when we took on the easement on the clock tower. I think that, again, I'm certainly not an expert, but I think taking it down would be at least as expensive, approaching as expensive as to repair it, and then we'd have nothing. So, I think that, and we do have we are in the fortunate position of having funds available to do it, which will not always be the case. If we leave it alone and do nothing, and some calamity occurs, liabilities will be tremendous and much more than what this would cost. I think for all those reasons, we should move forward. You said that we staging this off the one well lot.
That's
So taking up a chunk of the one well lot.
when the time comes.
Just right, so we'll have to factor that into our thinking as well. All right. So I think we've all had a chance to discuss it thoroughly. Nobody has anything else different to add. We'll move on to a vote. All those in favor of awarding the contract, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say nay. The ayes seem to have it, the ayes have it. And the contract is awarded for the clock tower rehabilitation. Thank you, Mr. Dick, for all the good work on this, your staff.
Thank you, Mayor and Council.
Next is award of the contract for a police emergency generator replacement. The Eastern Sales and Engineering from Baltimore, Maryland, in the amount of $289,500. And we'll go once again to Mr. Dick for that.
Thank you, Mr. President. Current capital projects funds includes funding for emergency generator replacement at the Westminster Police Department. Project was advertised on September 28th, 2022 on BMMA for the pre-bid meeting. Bid due dates of October 7th, 2022 and October 21st, 2022 respectively. Pricing was requested for 2 options, a diesel and natural gas operated generator. 3 bids were received. Below is a summary of those 3 bids received. Eastern Sales and Engineering, diesel price $259,500, natural gas price of $264,500. Borac LLC, $247,000 for the diesel, natural gas $282,700. Ebenezer Electric, $235,068 for the diesel price. Natural gas price, $291,264. The city staff has reviewed and evaluated the bids and has determined the bid for natural gas generator for the Eastern Sales and Engineering in the total amount of $264,500 to be acceptable with regards to the city needs. A gas line will need to be installed in order to feed the generator. The cost of the upgraded gas line from BGE needed to feed the police station and the new generator is unknown. An estimated amount of $25,000 has been added to the bid to offset this cost. The attached memorandum clarifies the preferences for the gas generator. There was a diesel generator. The overall total is $286,500 for this project. The FY 2023 budget for the project is $180,000. A budget amendment will be needed in the amount of $106,500. Staff recommends that the Mayor and Common Council accept the bid for Eastern Sales and Engineering from Baltimore, Maryland, in the amount of $289,500 for natural gas operated generator.
All right, thanks, Mr. Dick. May I have a motion to award the contract?
Motion to approve.
The motion by Mr. Dayhoff, there's a second.
Second.
The second by Ms. Any discussion or questions on this? Mayor Becker.
Mr. Dick, so, what was the deciding factor in the end to select the natural gas operated generator?
So there was about 5 to 6 things that we looked at that just benefit from gas. Natural gas cost is a lot less than diesel right now. The maintenance cost, we have 2 gas. There's a gas generator for City Hall here. Over the years, the maintenance on those have been a lot cheaper, which is a benefit, of course. There's no fuel storage tank, so we don't have to worry about if there's a rupture or something like that. With it being a natural gas line, there's no need for coordinating deliveries, and having somebody there to accept it, which then you get away from delivery fees and the price of fuel itself, of course. They tend to run on a smaller foundation. We're in a tight spot at the police station. Smaller foundation is really going to help with that. The last thing, they tend to run a lot quieter than a regular diesel generator.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Dick.
Mr. President, just a reminder to council, there's a memo behind Deputy Director Dick's memo that outlines the difference between the natural gas versus the diesel.
Mr. President.
Mr. Gavon.
Yeah, I read that memo, Mr. Pauls, thank you, but I guess I'm not trying to throw a monkey wrench in this, but the whole point of the generator for the police department is for it to operate in the event of a natural disaster of some sort. And my only reservation is, first of all, we're not going to run it on a regular basis. So the cost differential between gas and diesel is irrelevant, because we're only going to be using the thing other than its 10-minute run-in on a weekly basis. Or even if it's 20 minutes, that's a pretty minute amount of fuel either way. So the cost savings of gas versus diesel, in my opinion, is irrelevant. But if we do have a situation where gas is interrupted, either through a natural disaster or some man-made situation, police department's going to be out of power. Whereas if it's diesel, it's completely self-sufficient. It doesn't depend on BGE delivering the product at that time to run. With the proper tank, we could probably get a couple of days of electricity out of the diesel generator, regardless of whether there's an interruption of gas service or not, before it would need a refill. I'm not saying I'm going to vote against it because of that. I just think the items listed here, to me, aren't that consequential, other than maybe the maintenance in the tank in terms of it taking up some space. But I think we need to think about what's the purpose behind having the generator at the police department. The purpose is to make sure that they can have electricity no matter what the circumstances are. And, having a natural gas fed generator here at this building, and whatever, if it's interrupted, it's not the end of the world. Even city offices to some extent, is that gas or diesel? You know? Yeah, so it's diesel, so, and I'm not sure why we chose diesel there, but is it for the same reason that I'm talking about? Couldn't get a gas line? That's, well, so even City Hall, I would give their electricity, even the city offices, I'd give their electricity up before I leave the police department. Think of all of our outside, and we don't run natural gas at the wastewater treatment facility, do we? It's all diesel, isn't it?
Yes.
And I think for the same reason, if there's an interruption of gas, you gotta have that poop getting treated. So that's my only, and then look, it has nothing to do with money. They're almost the same price. It's. You gotta run you've gotta run a natural gas line, which is gonna cost something. You gotta run a fuel tank, which is gonna cost something. They're probably in the same ballpark, maybe not. I'm just putting it out there that I have a little bit of reservation on natural gas generator, because if we have got, an earthquake is pretty unlikely, but it's not, I mean, it's not completely impossible that could happen here. We're gonna be screwed. There's an earthquake, they're shutting the gas off. And then you're not gonna have electricity at your police department. So, Chief, this is your show. What do you think?
Okay, obviously, we lose power every now and again on a normal severe weather event. And the generator kicks on to back it up. I mean, we were relying on Public Works to weigh the two options. And I'm just thinking from a standpoint of needing the backup power for communications and other related things when we lose power. So as long as I have a reliable generator, I would rely on your expertise to figure out which one of the two is the better option. But I don't know what the reliability of the supply of natural gas in a disaster is versus the diesel generator. I would have to rely on your expertise.
I don't know that I'm no expert either in terms of how often gas lines go down or break or get shut off. I don't know. It may never happen. I might be wasting a bunch of our time right now having this conversation, but as public safety chair, my biggest concern is that our police can do their job when we need them the most in an absolute emergency. And with that absolute emergency situation, include not having gas to run, natural gas to run the generator versus diesel fuel. So I think we're gonna probably, he had to run to the bathroom, so I'll keep things moving forward. I think we'll probably just go ahead. This is for introduction, right? This is an adoption.
No, I'm sorry, it's adopted.
So this is for approval.
It is, Mr. President.
He's not here, but I'll have instead.
We can pull this and bring it back 2 weeks from now to just do some internal investigation and make sure. Since we've heard now from 2 elected officials about the question of is diesel the right answer versus natural gas, we can wait 2 more weeks. And I think rather than having a split council, I'd rather hear a little bit more, pull some staff together, make sure we're still set on this particular recommendation. I haven't heard from council on this topic, so talk further to council. I think there's opportunity, a little bit more discussion to make sure everyone feels comfortable.
I like that idea. I think it's good. Let's vet it fully out. You guys come back and tell us why it's the absolute better choice, other than cost. To me, that's not relevant.
Mr. President,
Sounds good.
I support natural gas. As a matter of fact, I'm involved in a project right now. The decision was whether to do it with diesel or do it with natural gas. And I decided to do it with gas because of the maintenance cost. And if I'm not mistaken, though, Mr. Dick, perhaps you can refresh my memory. Can we hook it up to a propane tank if the natural gas should be disrupted?
So that's.
Yeah, I don't remember the answer to that.
That's a question.
I don't remember the answer. I just like natural gas so much better. It's a cleaner, it's a much more efficient, from my experience with the Marine Corps, it's much better. It's a much more efficient running generator. I just like natural gas so much better than diesel. I read the memo and I was fascinated that there was a discussion as to the difference between the two. I would I would rather we just went ahead with the vote. I don't need to postpone this. So now it's up to you.
Well, I think the city administrator made a good suggestion. I think we should,
Okay.
so without objection, we will postpone until the next meeting.
Okay.
All right, moving on. Next item is award of the contract for the city road striping project. The Alpha Space Control Company. Space Control. Alpha Space Control Company. Parking space. Of Chambersburg, Pennsylvania, in the amount of $36,776.88. Mr. Dick, once again, busy night for you.
Yes, it is. Thank you, President. FY 23 budget includes funding for city roadway strip. Project was advertised on October 13, 2022 on EMMA with a pre-bid meeting and bid due dates of October 19, 2022 and November 4th, 2022 respectively. Two bids were received, with the lowest being from Alpha Space Control Company, Inc. Was a summary of the two bids received. Alpha Space Control Company, Inc., $36,776.88. Mid-Atlantic Marketing, Inc., $45,971. City staff has reviewed and evaluated the references and the proposal from Alpha Space Control Company, Inc. in the total amount of $36,776.88 and finds it to be acceptable with regard to the city needs. The FY 23 budget for this project is $35,000. The deficit of $1,776.80 will be covered by the street department road maintenance or repair operating. Staff recommends that the mayor and common council accept the bid of Alpha Space Control Company, Inc. of Chambersburg, Pennsylvania, in the amount of $36,776.88.
Great, thank you, Mr. Dick. May I have a motion on awarding the contract?
So moved, Mr. President.
A motion from Mr. Kavachi to approve and a second from Ms. Gilbert. Any questions, discussion, comments? Hearing none.
Mr. President.
Ms. Zimholz.
I just wanted to say that in the past, the city has not had to bid this particular service out. This is something that routinely comes in at under $25,000. We are in a strange economy these days where none of our requests for proposals came back under $25,000. And this is not the type of thing that's normally bid out, so we were even not entirely certain how to put the bid together. But here we are nonetheless, with a two-people bid on striping the streets, really putting down stripes in the streets. So I just want to make you aware, this, if it seems a little odd, it is. And that's how we got there. So perhaps in the future, we'll be back to what feels a little bit more normal, where we're not bidding this type of service out.
Well, I was going to say that in 20 years on the council, I don't recall ever having awarded a street contract before, but
Yeah.
always something new.
So I have a question. So yeah, obviously I've never seen this bid, no. But I also have a little bit of background on line striping, surprise to all of you. So
I do that.
So I have a question, Mr. Dick, do we not have a machine in our public works department? To do that ourselves in-house?
We have a small machine to do parking spaces, things like that, to do the city streets themselves, It's like a Zamboni type machine that has spray paint, so.
Yeah, it's a pretty good size, so I was just curious as to whether that was ever a thought to save money in the future. I mean, how much striping do we actually do? Is it a potential? Than to
So we
spend the money
usually,
for that?
sorry, we usually stripe every year. We missed the past couple of years because of COVID, which is why a lot of our streets as you drive them is nothing, because we've done some paving, just somewhere else. So we can do it every year. I couldn't imagine what kind of price would be on a truck that size with painting equipment. So
this is for our larger street. Okay, all right.
they'll do the entire city in probably about 2 to 3 days.
Thank you. Any other questions? Hearing no further discussion, move on to a vote. All those in favor of awarding the contract, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say nay. The ayes seem to have it, and the ayes have it. And the contract is awarded. Thanks, Mr. Dick. Don't leave yet. We got more stuff. Unfinished business. There's no unfinished business of which I'm aware. Does anybody have any unfinished business before the council? Hearing none, I'll move on to new business. First item is approval of fiscal year 23 CDL training program with Advantage C in the amount of $5,500 per employee, not to exceed $100,000. In turn to our HR Director, Ms. McCullough, please.
Effective February 7th, 2022, federal law requires that entry-level commercial drivers receive professional CDL Class A training through a certified program administered by the Federal Motor Carrier Safety Administration training provider. This training cannot be provided in-house, which was our past practice. On July 18th, 2022, Carroll Community College had their first commercial driver's license class. Since that time, the city has sent 9 employees to the training to obtain their CDL Class A license. The full cost of the CDL Class A program tuition and fees is $5,500 per student. This includes the NVA license verification, drug test, CDL permit fees, and up to 2 Maryland CDL road tests. Should a student require more than the 2 road, should the student require more than 2 tests to pass, an additional fee of $150 per try per student shall apply. This represents the college out-of-pocket expense to reimburse the school instructor to test time and instructions. A recommendation, the staff recommends that the mayor and common council accept and approve the cost of the CDL training program with Advantage C in the amount of $5,500 per employee, not to exceed $100,000.
Thank you, Ms. McCullough. May I have a motion on the approval of this program?
I'll make a motion.
Second.
Motion by Ms. Gilbert and a second by Mr. Kavachi.
Mr. President.
Ms. Newhoff.
A couple of things. Advantage C is the program through Carroll County Community College, just in case that wasn't clear. The second thing is the city's budget included $5,500 per employee. But I don't think we've thought about the fact that we would need to procure this item, right? So we've budgeted it, which is one avenue we have to think about. Is there money in the pot to pay for it? But once we've exceeded the $25,000 expense line, we have to consider whether or not we're in line with our procurement requirements. Those sometimes feel like the same concept, but they're different. They're 2 totally different avenues. So what's in front of us today is a procurement item, like you to allow us to spend this much because we are going to go over the $25,000. In fact, we have. We may need to add into the upcoming budget amendments a little bit more for CDL employees, although we did include in the budget already enough money to cover the current expenses that we've had. We just wanted to give ourselves enough leeway to get through the rest of the year. We spent about $50,000 on the CDL training. Those classes are not offered but once a quarter or so. So we need to get the employees in when we had a chance to. So this is a bit of a housekeeping item. I don't think we'll spend $100,000. This is a not to exceed procurement allowance that will allow us to continue moving forward in the case that we have a new employee come on that then needs to be trained. I think that fully explains further the rest of us.
How many employees do we have with CDLs?
All of our safety employees are required to have a CDL right now. There's no Class B anymore. So if you're any kind of truck you're driving now, Public Works has to have a Class A. I think we have 10 employees that have been through or are currently going through, or about that 8 to 10, 9. Okay, there we go. And we require an employee be with us for 6 months before we send them through that to make sure that it's a good fit and it works out. They've made it through their probationary period, et cetera, et cetera. So this is, again, just a procurement avenue to cover us and make sure we're following the city code.
Very good, Mr.
Mr.
Kavachi.
President, I just wanted to make a quick comment. I'm really glad to see that we're using Carroll Community College for this, as opposed to going to some out of county, private enterprise. you know, the Carroll community spends a lot of time and effort trying to put programming together to make sure that they're relevant to the community. It's taxed, they're partially funded by taxpayers' money, so it's nice to see that we're capitalizing off of a program. They put a lot of, I know most of you know, I'm on the foundation board there, so there was a lot of thought that went into what kind of programming the college can put together that's going to benefit the community. I'm was really thrilled to see this come through, that we're going to be able to take advantage of that. So it's great on that front.
Very good, thank you. Anyone else? Any no further discussion, move on to a vote. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say nay. The ayes seem to have it, the ayes have it. And the program is approved. Next item is approval of HRI Incorporated Contract Change Order number 6. Mr. Dick, back to you again.
Thank you, Mr. President. In early 2019, the Mayor and Common Council awarded a construction contract to HRI Inc. for the wastewater treatment plant ENR and biosolids upgrade project. The city contracted DHD for ongoing engineering services during the construction. By separate contract, the city retained DHD to provide construction management and inspection services for the duration of the project. To date, the Mayor and Common Council have authorized 5 change orders to the city's contract with HRI, totaling $1,652,289.12. Change orders number 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5 qualified for state cost sharing eligibility. Change order number 6 acts to balance the additions and credits to the project to date. The additional costs and credits include the following: work related to wall modifications at 205 and 206, septic treatment facility, PCO 21, for $4,243. Work related to roof parapet wall at septic treatment facility is PCO 40, $7,031. Credit related to 3 pipe spools not needed, PCO 41, $2,755. Work related to additional beams, F1 to F3, solid steel building, PCO 48, $70,082. Work related to phase 1 beam displacement remediation, PCO 48A, $9,986. Work related to phase 2 beam displacement remediation, PCO 48A, $8,909. Work related to phase 3A beam displacement remediation, PCO 48A, $25,113. Work related to chemical building, utility water piping modification, PCO 50, $1,129. Work related to DI module relocation, PCO 51, $1,645.
Mr. Dick,
Yes.
we've got all these. I really.
I'm on it. I'm not.
I-
Okay,
I'm not sure that you reading just makes us understand what they are.
okay. It should be noted that GHD is responsible for $108,108, PCO 48, 48A, and 59, a total $136,326. Taking the contract deductions into account, the net cost of the change order number 6 is $264,418.42, with the exceptions of the credits listed. Change order number 6 is subject to the state cost share eligibility of 53.65%. The city's portion to pay is $221,311.35. And the county's portion to pay is $53,931.07. The city staff will invoice GHD for $108,108 of that amount. Total value for this change order is 3% of the project. Staff recommended the common council level to execute change order number 6 and the total amount of $264,418.42 to the city's contract with HRI.
Thank you, Mr. Dick. Is there anything you wanted to add?
Yes.
I have.
I Thank you, Mr. Dick. That's a technical insight. Let me give you a good picture insight as to what we're doing here. This project is an enormous project, as you may know, and during the initial engineering phase, there were quite a few things that were proposed by GHD, and then the city staff looked at it and said, actually, in reality, that's not going to work for us. We'd like you, for example, to take out this column in the middle of the building because we want an open space where we can see around it. We don't want a big column in the middle. They took out the column, but inadvertently forgot to then deal with the ceiling that they would have to in order to remove that column. Then the contractor comes out to actually build the thing and realizes, oh wait, these engineering drawings are wrong, right? It hasn't accommodated something. So this work order is dealing with what probably would have been in there in the first place. But there were some things, technical things that the engineer just frankly forgot. That's part of the reason why GHD owes us a little bit of money in this particular change order. And then the county obviously pays a portion of this because the septic facility is the county's. The state is paying part of it because thankfully the state's paying part of it. They're making us do this in the first place. So the bottom line of this change order, which totals $264,418.42. That's the total of the change order. The amount the city has to pay of that, once we subtract out the credits we took, since once they re-engineer things, you realize, well, we don't actually need that as well. Once we take out what GHD owes us, once we take out what the county's going to pay, once we take out what the state's going to pay, the amount that the city has to pay of that total amount is $113,203.35. It's a much smaller portion. This is not, we've had a variety of bumps in the road with this project. This is not an example of the bump in the road. This is what would happen anyway when you're putting together a giant project and you're years into it. And the final thing is, and we toss this in at the very end, total value of all the change orders for this project is only 3%, which is pretty low for a project this size. This particular change order is not 3%. It's when you add all of the change orders together, 1 through 5, plus this one, which is number 6. Does that clarify?
That's very helpful. Thank you, Mrs. Hulse. Anybody have any questions? Actually, let's get a motion first. May I have a motion to approve the contract change order?
Make a motion to approve.
And if there's a motion by Ms. Gilbert, is there a second?
Second.
A second by Mr. Kavachi. All right, any discussion, any questions?
Mr. President,
Mr. Kavachi?
so on my calculator, I have $141,000 and then I have 113 written on this piece of paper because I'm looking at the 260 whatever, and I'm like, that's not right. It didn't take the 53% into account. Thank you.
All right, thank you. All right, anyone else? Hearing nothing else, I know we've all been briefed thoroughly on this project all along the way. And there's it's a very big project. And so we do expect something. Move on to a vote. All those in favor? Of the approval change order, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say nay. The ayes seem to have it, the ayes have it. And change order number 6 is approved. Thank you, Mr. Dick. Waiver of procurement process and award of contract with Continental Technologies Inc. for replacement and installation of new server infrastructure. Mr. Dick.
Thank you, Mr. President. City currently has a combination of servers, attached storage and backup appliance hardware that has reached and in some cases exceeded its expected life cycle. The FY 23 capital improvements budget includes funding for the replacement of this equipment. As part of the next planning steps, the city will be repairing its existing IT server infrastructure. The scope of the services will include all hardware and technical services required to complete the following: project management, server configuration, services and verifications, installation and configuration of 2 new HPE SN 2010 top of the rack switches, installation and configuration of 2 HPE EL 360 Gen 10 plus servers, installation configuration of 1 new HPE Nimble AF20 storage appliance, installation configuration of 1 HPE Store 13660 storage appliance, installation configuration of Azure components to support DR infrastructure and replication, DRAAS. Continental Technology Inc., CTI, are currently listed on the Maryland Marketplace Master Contract List for hardware 2012, contract number 295520. Maryland Marketplace blanket purchase order, BPO number 060B249002. The FY23 capital improvement budget includes funds for this project. Staff recommends that the Mayor and Common Council waive the procurement process and award of the contract with Continental Technologies and for the replacement and installation of new server infrastructure in the amount of $291,509.99.
Thank you, Mr. Dick. We have a motion to waive the procurement process for the award of the contract with Continental Technologies.
So moved.
Then a motion by Mr. Gavacci, is there a second?
Second.
A second by Ms. Gilbert, thank you. Any discussion, any questions?
Mr. President,
Mr.
I think
Gavacci?
it's important to note that we're doing this through Maryland, what they call Marketplace. Thank you. So it's not as if this is just willy-nilly being awarded to someone out there. It's already gone through a significant vetting process through the state, and we're just piggybacking on that. Important to note that.
Thank you, and that's an important point, Mr. Gavacci, and I think that, while it's critically important that we follow good procurement practices, at the same time, the procurement law and a lot of the reasons that things are the way they are in the procurement law were done before the internet made a lot of things possible, before new technologies made a lot of things possible. I think that we probably need to think about in general how we update some of these things amongst municipal governments, state government, other governments, to sort of take into account some new ways of doing business. But in this particular case, you're right. The Maryland Marketplace was created by the state just for this reason, so that local governments like ours can take advantage of these opportunities. Any further discussion? Hearing none, move on to a vote. All those in favor of waiving the procurement process and awarding the contract, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say nay. The ayes seem to have it, the ayes have it. And motion is adopted. Mr. Kavanaugh, you have a motion for us on the closed meeting?
I do, Mr. President. I move that the Common Council adjourn into a closed meeting at the conclusion of the Mayor and Common Council work session meeting on Monday. This isn't right.
That's
Yes, it is.
Oh, it is, I'm sorry, it is Monday the 14th. My God, yeah, sorry about that. At the conclusion of the Common Council, this isn't a work session. This is.
Yeah, we don't have a work
Common
session
Council
now.
meeting. On Monday, November 14th, in accordance with the general provisions of Article of the Annotated Code of Maryland 3-305, subsection B, subsection 1, discuss the appointment, employment, assignment, promotion, discipline, demotion, compensation, removal, resignation, or performance evaluation of appointees, employees, or officials over whom this body has jurisdiction, and other personnel matters that affect one or more specific individuals.
Thank you, Mr. Kavanaugh. Is there a second? The second by Ms. Gilbert. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say nay. The ayes have it. We will go into a closed session at the conclusion of the work session, which will follow the regular meeting. Thank you. All right, now it's time for departmental reports, and for that, we will turn to Ms. Imholz to lead us through that.
Thank you, sir. We're going to start tonight with the planning department. Who's got some very exciting things to talk about relating to Small Business Saturday and the Mayor's Cup and a variety of other things. So let's take it away, Mr. Depot.
Thank you. First, I'll just talk about some of the boards. On November 1st, the Board of Zoning Appeals approved case 2210 to allow a contractor's equipment and storage yard special exception use, along with a variance from the 300-foot setback from a lot in a residential zone at the undeveloped property located southwest of the Magna Way, Old Bachman's Valley Road intersection. On November 17th, the Planning and Zoning Commission is scheduled to review Site Development Plan S2111 to construct a 40,000 square foot medical office building at 404 Malcolm Drive, Westminster, Maryland. As recall, this was part of the resolution 2203, annexing the subject property, which was enacted by the mayor and common council on August 22nd, 2022, and became effective on October 6th, 2022. It was mentioned earlier, but this is the last Saturday for the farmers market, the 19th. So if you haven't been, please go from 8 a.m. to 1 p.m. If you do go every day, you're welcome to come back again.
Every Saturday.
We are ramping up with the passport program for Small Business Saturday. We received the passports up to 5,000. They're being distributed to the other jurisdictions in in Carroll County. And some things you'll notice that are a little bit different this year. We did add a couple more businesses, which was nice. I think 7 more businesses were added to the passport in Westminster alone. We've gotten a lot of feedback, good feedback about that. We've also received window clings, which will be provided for every participant with a QR code that takes you directly to a Westminster page listing all the businesses associated with the Small Business Saturday. So again, that's a little bit extra. We did receive additional items from American Express, which we will also pass out for Small Business Saturday as we move forward. The Mayor's Cup, again, we have sent out or informed the DBA, Downtown Business Association, the Mayor Cup is up and coming, and to start working on your facades and your windows in downtown Westminster. You will see some out there already. With that, the city, and special thanks to Abby Gruber and her staff, are working with some of the vacant buildings in downtown Westminster to try to beautify them. You might see Coffee Music right now has a bunch of trees inside. Again, thank you. That was great help from the rec department. And we're working on getting some window displays and paintings on some of the vacant buildings as well. So you'll see that coming in the next week or so. And that completes my report. If you have any questions.
Anyone have any questions for the planning department? Mr.
Quick comment. I want to apologize. I wanted to say something in under council comments about that. I've got 2 positive feedbacks about the vacant storefront decorations from 2 different people over the past few days, how wonderful that is, what a good idea and how good it looks. So great work on that. And I should have said something under council comments about that.
Thank you.
You know, I love a team model. This is another one of many examples where we had multiple departments working together in order to achieve that particular goal. So thank you to the planning department, to the recreation department. Any other questions for the planning director? Hearing none, we'll move on to human resources. Ms. McCullough.
The Human Resources Department, we continue to assist departments across all departments in recruiting. We recently conducted new hire orientation for 2 new employees.
Love it when new employees come on board.
Yes.
Okay. Any questions for the Human Resources Director? Hearing none, we're going to stay on this geography and move on to the Police Department. Chief Ledwell.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. The only comment I have to add to Councilman Kovacs already talked about is that on November the 9th, one of our night shift officers, PFC Juan Rojas, was recognized for his exemplary performance during 2022 at the Salute to Service luncheon at the American Legion. PFC Rojas, during this timeframe, received a Lifetime Award, 2 letters of recognition. He is regularly called out to do Spanish interpretations, and he continues to serve with the Army National Guard. So that was a nice recognition for him. I also wanted to note that not only our detectives, but the detectives with the Carroll County Narcotics Task Force from the Sheriff's Office continue to do great work in their efforts to hold people accountable and suppress the drug dealing in Carroll County. Have made some significant arrests, have taken some prohibited persons with firearms off the streets. So that kind of goes under the radar continuously, but I wanted to bring up that is happening and that they're doing, I think, exceptional work. And I think the teamwork between the agencies is really good. So that concludes my report unless there are any questions.
Any questions for the chief? Hearing none, we will move on to the Department of Housing. Mr. Brown.
Thank you, Ms. Inhofe. The only thing I'd just like to report on is that the new code enforcement officer is going through orientation and training and some guidance from me, but I do think that he's picking up things very quickly. I am at this point very pleased with his progress and his energy and his ability to relate not only to the other members of the staff, but the public as well. So real pleased about that. Thank you. That's all I have.
Thank you, Mr. Brown, and I appreciate your leadership during the vacancy that you had in code enforcement department. Is there anything for the housing director? Hearing none, we will move on to public works. Tonight has been
He's coming up all the time already.
last evening, so I assume it was a short report, but Mr. Dick.
The only thing I'd like to add on top of everything else you talk about is, you noticed it's gotten cold out. There's even some reports of possible weather in the future, but everything else going on, we manage. All the trucks are ready to go for the winter. So
Excellent.
that's all I have.
That is a terrible answer and also wonderful. Thank you for keeping us prepared. I myself have yet to turn on the heat. I may be the last one out there. Yes. We are moving on, of course, to our recreation director, who is getting ready for Miracle on Main as our next big event. So Ms. Gruber.
Yes, I would just like to invite everyone in Westminster and beyond to please join us for the brightest night on Main Street. And it's even brighter this year, thanks to the lighting of Main Street. So events will be held on Saturday, November 26th. This is the Saturday after Thanksgiving. At 4:55 p.m. Our event steps off with our 1 mile Jingle Bell Run on the parade route. Following that, the parade steps off at 5 p.m. Immediately following the parade, Santa, along with Madam Mayor, will light our tree in Locust Lane. Following that will be a carol sing led by the St. John's Choir and the Westminster Municipal Band. And once that adjourns, families and children are invited back to the Armory for Santa's Treat, where children can visit with Santa, make crafts and play games, and also new this year, enjoy our miniature holiday lights display in City Park, where we will have a trackless train that we are transforming into the Polar Express that will transport you through our mini holiday lights display. So we are very excited to be adding that to our festivities this year, and certainly hope that we see teams of people out to enjoy the ringing in of the holiday season. And that concludes my report, unless there are questions.
Who's got questions for the recreation director? Yes.
The Polar Express, is it just that Saturday that it will be in the city park, or
That's a really great
throughout the
question.
holiday season?
So we are hoping to leave the lights up so that people can wander through them on foot after the Polar Express leaves on Saturday, the 26th. So it is our intent to leave the lights up, and people will be invited to, as I said, wander through in City Park. However, that will only last as long as people respect the lights that are in City Park. So if something happens to them, then we will need to take them down.
Is your department putting the lights up in the city park?
Along with our partner in crime, the streets department, yeah.
Fantastic.
And planning is gonna help too.
And housing?
Sure.
Anyway, that was pretty good.
Wonderful, thank you.
You're most welcome.
Thank you, Ms. Moss.
Any other questions for Ms. Gruber? The Miracle on Main is a very big event for us. In order to get us there, we have to switch over very quickly the Main Street area from the Veterans Day celebrations over to the holiday celebrations, which happens very, very quickly. It's part of the reasons why the lights went up a little early this year, is to make sure we can meet that deadline. So I want to take the opportunity now to thank the staff, the Parks Department, the Recreation and Parks Department, the Streets Department, the Public Works Department, and all the departments that help with this very, very big event. I'd also like to echo the council's thoughts and public's thoughts about the lights. They really, I mean, they look better than I even anticipated. I'm able to see them when they come on from my office every evening, and I really think Miracle on Main is going to be something special this year with those lights up. We've been thinking of them as holiday lights, but as Councilmember Gilbert mentioned, they're really winter lights, so they're going to be up until March. And we're working with the business community to think about creative ways to engage Main Street in the deep, dark winter months in January when no one wants to come out because it's too cold and too dreary. It's not going to be dreary on Main Street. It's going to be lit up. And that's a good opportunity for the businesses to think through ways, creative ways that they can highlight their business. And we've got some exciting things in the wings to talk to you about in the future. So stay tuned on that. Thank you, Mayor and Council, once again, for putting that in the budget this year. I mean, that seems like just such a good use of the funds that we put together, at least from my perspective. For the public, I'd like to remind everyone that city offices will be closed on both Thursday and Friday for Thanksgiving. So on November 24th and 25th. And Councilmember Dayhoff, do you have a report for the fire department?
Ms. Hunt, I get a 25-page report every month, fire department. If you like, I could provide that to Director Dick and he could read that. He's done such a great job. The statistics are extremely, they're exciting. They're really, that is that in now? Okay. All right, total
Why
call.
don't you share those with us? Just you can forward it to us.
I'm sure you would like to read every page. Okay, it's just really exciting stuff. Total calls for the month of October were 599, 488 of them were EMS. Fire was 111. 320 of those calls were in the city limits. 218 were in the first due area. Number of overlapping calls continues to increase. 58% of the time we had to call in mutual aid companies to help us out with the calls. And that's my report. I mean, unless you want me to go on with the, I have 25 pages.
Okay.
We're good.
Take the efficient version.
Well, I want to do what the council president. Okay.
Two more meetings.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Thank you very much.
Mr. President, that concludes the staff report.
Thank you very much, Ms. Holt. And that concludes the regular section of regular portion of the meeting. We'll now move on to the final item on our agenda, which is citizen comment. When we invite the public to address the mayor and council on any issues that pertain to tonight's agenda, or any other city issue. For citizens not attending the public meeting, we invite you to send us your comments or concerns via email at comments@westminstermd.gov. All comments received by email will be shared with the mayor and council. Commenters should include their address and phone number with their comments. We'll now invite comments from anyone who is present. Let me remind everyone that this is an opportunity for the public to share their thoughts and concerns with the mayor and council. Our role tonight is to listen to the comments and respond as appropriate after consultation with staff. I'd like to also encourage everyone to keep their remarks as brief and succinct as possible. If anybody here tonight who wishes to be heard, please give us your name and address for the record. Ms. Yes.
Linda McNulty, 195 West Main Street. I came across this very cool license plate attachment, and it said Westminster, Maryland, a friendly city. I thought that might be a good slogan for the future.
Where do you find it?
I found this at a flea market in Gettysburg. And I know it's Westminster, Maryland, because it says Maryland on it,
Right.
but incredibly cool.
It is.
Oh, I don't know.
You know how old it is?
I'm gonna talk to Tom Gordner, Kevin might help me figure it out.
That used to be the slogan. That was the slogan
Yeah, I
years
know.
ago.
Seems that, doesn't it?
Interesting.
That is interesting.
That is a cool thing. It
I love
is
it.
very cool, and it wasn't terribly expensive, like $12 or something. I mean, it wasn't.
That's really cool.
Yeah.
I thought we could use that slogan again.
Maybe.
What are we, the city that strolls
For history meets tomorrow.
We're history meeting tomorrow, the mayor.
Friendly city, their history.
Seems very epic.
Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you.
Anyone else here that wishes to be heard? Yes, sir.
James Houseman, 5 South Center Street. Oh. I got some things that you want to follow along.
Okay.
So we have an issue, it's happened several times over the past couple of years, it kind of really came to a head this summer and then again this fall. And it's the closures of the streets in Westminster. So I'm here on behalf of several businesses around the 5 South Center Street area. In the past, it was things like the St. Patrick's Day run, when they closed Main and Green Street. And we have business Saturday morning, our customers can't get in and it's kind of tolerated and everything, but earlier this spring, we had an event where somebody requested and was granted a permit to shut down South Street and South Alley, which is the main entrance to our property, which really kind of pretty much brought our business and some of the other businesses to a complete halt. So I've been in contact with the police and the city, and they've been great. Everybody's been really responsive and everything, and especially Lieutenant Wright. He's been has gone above and beyond, but I think that they're really limited in what they can do. And I've talked to some other people and they felt that maybe the best course was to get it in front of council and to get it on the agenda or whatever you guys do with it and see if we can address it moving forward. So, so what happened was we had the one event and then we were unaware that they applied for a second permit and were able to shut down the street again. So I went to the city code to look and see, I was thinking, there's gotta be something here that requires them to notify us when they do something like this. So when I went to the code, which is in front of you, there was nothing there. But if you read it a little bit more, you guys only have permits for picketing, parades, and demonstrations. And when it comes to block parties, festivals, karaoke in the alley, that kind of thing. I don't know that it really fits into the classification. And believe me, we're not against anything. We're just, we want to cooperate with everybody. And we're just looking for some cooperation from the other people and make sure you guys are issuing the permits that you should be issuing. I just don't know. I've asked, I even went as far as to call city attorneys. But I couldn't get an explanation how a festival or skateboarders coming down Main Street, which has no effect on us, but where that falls into a parade or demonstration permit. So, and if it's not more clearly defined, it's like, how do you not grant a permit? I don't know how many permits are applied for a year or how many you turn down, but it just seems like over the 9 years that we've been in the city, it's more and more and more. And so I'd like for some clarification whether or not these things are permitted. Maybe you can address and clarify. I've included in here, Hampstead has on page 4, theirs include parades, public circuses, carnivals, walks, marches, runs, bicycle races, similar events, festivals, street fairs, and flea markets. So they addressed it. And then if you go to Frederick, which I've included below that I don't really need to discuss right now, there's a lot more there that Frederick addresses. So I thought maybe it should be something that you guys can take under advisement and see what you can do in the future. And the main thing we were asking is that if you do anything, can you include something in there where on the application they would have to identify businesses that could be affected or residents that could be affected and some sort of notification to those businesses. So.
Just jumping. Happy 5 South Center Street. And this just falls onto where the part of the road was shut off. And Carroll Gymnastics just think Saturday morning, you're taking your child to class and you're running late because, you've got your little one, you've got your baby. And then the parents want to come in the one entrance and then they can't. And a lot of people don't know the back roads and the one-way streets and all that. So they have to figure out, and then they're late for class. And then they're late for class and then they're all worried, am I gonna miss my class? So then I have to say, no worries. We'll try to fit you in another time, we'll make it work. So when they were closing down the one side of the road and we got, wouldn't say notification on this one. It was more of, hey, what's going on? And then when I heard they were closing down again, I turned to my landlord and said, you know anything about this? And he says, oh gosh, no. So he has plenty of tenants. We have a hair salon right there on the street as well, where the woman comes into the program. And she was concerned because she has new clients from Baltimore that don't know the back streets. So it ended up, we were not trying to be a pain in the neck. I'm sure you've all had your discussions, but we ended up just talking with other people, realizing, holy cow, nobody knows about this. And we really need to get the word out to say, this is going to be closed down. You guys need to understand how to get back in. And then it's an alleyway, so exiting Carroll Gymnastics.
One-way streets,
It's
one room for one car. You gotta understand, we have 57 parking spaces and we fill and empty those parking spaces every 45 minutes from 7:30 a.m. till 12:30 p.m. And it's just, you know, can you consider, but first of all, I'd like to ask if anybody knows how these events fall under parades or demonstrations. But, you know, a notification, you know, consider alternative locations. Yeah, beautiful park. You know, that some of these events could be done in, and the notification once the permit is approved, so that we can better deal with it. You know, Lieutenant Wright contacted us. He did send an email almost a week in advance, but unfortunately we didn't see the email. And you know, you're talking almost 175 phone calls on a Friday night to cancel classes or reschedule classes because it's just impossible to deal with. And so that somebody can sing karaoke in the alley to disrupt the 175 people and completely, I'm going to say shut down a business. It just doesn't seem right. So, whatever you guys can do.
But it wasn't just, you know, we were putting word out to the businesses around us. They didn't know.
Yeah, we got 3 one-way streets through a single lane.
So that's all.
So, but does anybody know? I mean, have there been amendments or has it just kind of evolved over time that these things kind of felt like that?
Unfortunately, we haven't looked into it, because we're not in a position for that. Get here to answer any of your questions tonight. I appreciate you bringing this to our attention. We'll take it under advisement and deal with the staff and we'll get back to you. And, you know, let you know, answer whatever questions we can and give some thought as to how we ought to proceed with this. But we very much appreciate you bringing this to our attention.
Can I ask a question about the generator that you were talking about today? that allowed?
Yeah, we don't really do that. Okay, thank you. Anyone else wish to be heard? All right, well, with that, that concludes our agenda and the meeting. Our next regular meeting will be on Monday, November 28th. In the meantime, wish everybody a happy Thanksgiving, and without objection, we are adjourned.
Never mind.